I start off with an anecdote. There is this celebration which has become very important nowadays. It's supposed to have started with the Mirthas in Persia, moved on to Rome, and courtesy the Roman Empire spread across the world. It's a very simple annual celebration called the birthday. Now, how come this birthday figures here in climate change? And that's a personal experience. As a student, I was very fond of celebrating my birthdays, and I remember exactly 2 decades ago, on the occasion of my birthday, I walked up to the city center and I saw a huge banner there. It said 50% discount, end of winter season sale. I bought myself a Kashmiri jacket and very proudly wore it that day. And just for your information, I was born near the vernal equinox, which is like the 3rd week of March. Now, last March, when I came back from Europe after spending 18 months over there, the same shop had a similar banner, 50% discount, but this time it said, beginning of summer sale. 20 years ago, it was the end of winter sale, and now suddenly it's become beginning of summer sale. I didn't buy anything thinking that my carbon footprint would increase, but that evening when I sat down for a meal with my family, none of us were wearing woolen clothes. This is, you can call it fashion change, but I think it's climate change. If you move on another 10 years, I remember the tercentenary of the Khalsa, 1999 at Anandpur Sahib. And I suddenly felt very thirsty. And I found a kiosk there where they sell this shikanjbi, which is that sweet lemonade. And while I was having the lemonade, I said, thank God, nothing like a shikanjbi on a hot summer afternoon. Excuse me, did I say hot summer afternoon in April? April I thought was spring, but that's climate change for you. Now, I've narrated these 2 anecdotes merely to stress that climate change is occurring in my lifetime. Now, a lot of you over here have spent more years than I have, lived longer, you've seen more seasons than I have, you've experienced more summers and winters than me. And a lot of you would have been born and brought up in the countryside, so your relationship with nature would perhaps be stronger than mine, and you would have more such cases and anecdotes than I do. Climate change is now gone beyond anecdotal references. It's now firmly in the domain of scientific analysis. And a couple of thousand scientists have come up with reports which now clearly mentions that the climate changes, there is no single doubt about this. But the reason I put on these anecdotes before you is that because you will be able to relate to these anecdotes much better than I do. I mean, it's very simple to say there was, since 1900 to 2000, there was a 0.6 degrees rise in temperature, or that there was a 17 centimeter rise in the ocean levels, or that the Gangotri glacier is declining by 28 meters per year. But if you're able to visualize it and say that the Gangotri glacier was here last year, maybe at the Punjab Book Center, and now it's gone up to the petrol station, that's when the enormity of the challenge hits you. I move on to slightly technical definitions and data, but I'll make it as simple as possible when I talk of climate change. And I quote a definition here. Climate change is any long-term significant change in the average weather that a region experiences. Any systematic change in the long-term statistics of climate events sustained over several decades or longer is climate change. Too often, global warming and climate change are used interchangeably. I think there is a slight problem here because climate change is not just about global warming. It is not just about temperature. It is also about precipitation. How much rainfall are you receiving? Is it less or more? How is the intensity of the rainfall? Has it increased or decreased? And what is the seasonal variation? Are we receiving rainfall in the same seasons? You might recall the December rains this year. Did we actually have any December rains? I looked up the IMD data and it said that from October to December this year, 2008, Punjab received only 10 millimeters of rain, which is 75% below normal. And surprisingly, during the monsoon season, we had over 750 mm, which is 34% above normal, which is again a variation in precipitation. But if you look at it seriously, it is not just this year. But if you look at the previous 4 years, we've been down by 94%, 25%, 96%, and now 75%. So the previous 4 years, we've actually had very little winter rainfall. This morning I was talking to a friend who is a quinoa grower, who grows citrus. And he said, quinoa is very mithas and penny. And I said, why? He said, because we didn't have any winters. And not only that, because we did not have a good winter, the wheat crop may turn out to be fairly bad this time. That's climate change for you. Now, climate change has been happening since ages actually. Then the question is that why are we talking about it? I mean, climate change can happen due to natural factors like the intensity of the sun. It can happen due to the orbit of the earth, the ellipse or the axis. It can happen due to natural processes, which is the ocean circulation. But more important, it's now happening because of human factors. But even those who say that, climate change is not really of serious concern, that 0.6 degrees rise in temperature over a century is not really too big an amount. The previous 3 decades in the last century has seen a phenomenal increase in global warming. In fact, if you look at the data, it really tells you that 5 of the hottest years ever since temperature was recorded have been 1998, 2002, 2003, 2004 and 2001 in that order. Which means that 5 of the hottest years in our recorded history have been in the past 10 years. And going by these projections, we will probably have a 1.4 to a 5.8 degrees increase in this century. And in Europe, it's likely to be from 2 to 6.3 degrees. Remember, while climate change occurred throughout the world, it was Europe where the temperature increase has been the maximum. Again, you might say, 5 degrees temperature rise over a century, what difference does it make? Well, we've had the ice ages. And then after the ice ages, we have the warmer periods, the interglacial periods. Remember, the temperature during the ice ages was only 5 degrees less than what the temperature is today. Only 5 degrees is what makes the difference between interglacial periods and the ice ages. So 5 degrees could actually mean the ice ages again, if it's a decline. But here we have an increase. But otherwise, you can take a simple device. It's called the thermometer. And you pop up the thermometer in your mouth, and if it says 96.6 degrees Fahrenheit, you're normal. But if there's a 0.4 degree increase, it's 99, a doctor would say, you're not well. But if it's and remember this is Fahrenheit, and if it's a 1 degree centigrade rise in temperature, then you have fever, and the doctor, any doctor worth his salt will say, please take rest, you've been overexerting yourself, until your temperature comes back to normal, please take rest, don't undertake any activity. I wish this globe had a doctor. That if the temperature has gone up, nobody is asking the globe, nobody is asking the earth to please take rest. When the temperature comes back to normal, start your activities again. That's simply not happening. So to just give you an idea on how serious the temperature rise can be, take an analogy of your own body. Our body is not able to withstand a single degree rise in temperature. How do you expect the lithosphere, the atmosphere and the hydrosphere to do it? How do you expect the system to cope with it? Recently, Susan George, the famous thinker, was here in Chandigarh. But the most interesting interview came from Delhi. I remember Times of India, there was an interview with Pamela Philippos, and Susan George said, poverty is reversible, climate change is not. If there are people who are poor, you can still do something about it, but if you have climate change, there are very little ways of reversing this climate change. That is the enormity of the problem. I mentioned that climate change should not be mixed up with global warming. And climate change is not only changes in atmosphere, it's also changes in temperature, precipitation, sea levels, land cover and land use changes.